Commander Jake Sullivan stared at the massive ship floating in space before them. The alien vessel was 3 times larger than his exploration ship on ES Discovery and covered in strange purple metal that seemed to glow with its own light. He had been exploring the outer edge of human space for 2 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, while Jake studied the readings on his screen. The alien ship had appeared without warning just as they finished mapping the 4th planet in the system. Their sensors showed the vessel used technology far beyond anything humans had developed. Energy readings suggested weapons that could destroy the Discovery with a single shot. Lieutenant Kelly Barnes turned from her communication station with worry in her eyes. The aliens were sending a message, but it came through channels their equipment barely understood. The signal used frequencies and patterns that human technology struggled to decode. After several minutes of work, she managed to get a rough translation. Running through their computers, the message was simple and terrifying. The beings called themselves the Vexhai Empire, and they demanded that all humans leave this area of space immediately. They claimed ownership of everything within 50 light years of their current position. Any human ships found in their territory after 7 days would be destroyed without warning. Jake felt his heart racing as he listened to the translated message. Humanity had spread across 12 star systems over the past century, but they had always been alone in the galaxy. Finding intelligent alien life should have been the greatest discovery in human history. Instead, it felt like a death sentence for everyone aboard his ship. The alien vessel began moving closer to the Discovery, and Jake ordered his crew to prepare for emergency jump to faster than light travel. Their ship was built for exploration, not combat, and carried only basic defensive weapons. Against technology this advanced, they would have no chance in a fight. As the Discovery jumped away from the system, Jake sent an emergency message back to Earth. The report would take weeks to reach home, but Admiral Lisa Carter needed to know what they had found. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and their new neighbors did not seem friendly. On Earth, Admiral Carter received the message while reviewing colony defense reports in her office. She had served in the military for 30 years and seen humanity grow from a single-world species to masters of 12 star systems. The news from Commander Sullivan changed everything she thought she knew about their place in the galaxy. Carter immediately called an emergency meeting with the Colonial Defense Board. President Elena Rodriguez arrived within an hour along with the heads of every major military division. The small conference room felt cramped as they watched Sullivan's report on the main screen. Dr. Peter Morgan from the Xenobiology Department studied every detail of the alien ship design while the others talked. The purple metal seemed to absorb certain types of energy while reflecting others. The weapon system showed power outputs that suggested the aliens could destroy entire cities with their smallest guns. The Vexhai had given humanity 7 days to leave 50 light-years of space, but they controlled much more territory than that. Long-range sensors detected similar ships in dozens of nearby systems. This was not a single vessel, but part of a massive fleet that could number in the thousands. General Rick Barnes pulled up star charts showing human colonies in the disputed area. 3 million people lived on worlds that the aliens now claimed as their own. Moving that many civilians would take months even if they had enough transport ships. The 7-day deadline made evacuation impossible. President Rodriguez made the decision that would change human history forever. Instead of trying to negotiate or surrender territory, they would prepare for war. Every military ship in human space received orders to begin moving toward the frontier. Colony militias activated emergency protocols and began fortifying their worlds. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, the Galactic Council monitored events with great interest. 12 different alien species had formed this Alliance 3000. years ago when the Vexi first appeared in their region of space. Every species that encountered the reptilian warriors had eventually submitted to their demands rather than face total destruction. Ambassador Zarthol reviewed the reports coming from human space with confusion. Historical records showed that most species surrendered within days of receiving Vexi ultimatums. The humans appeared to be doing the opposite by mobilizing their military forces instead of preparing for evacuation. The Vexi had maintained galactic peace through fear for countless generations. Their superior technology and ruthless efficiency in warfare made resistance seem pointless. No species had ever successfully fought against their expansion and survived as an independent civilization, but something about the human response seemed different from previous encounters. Instead of panic or immediate surrender, the report showed organized military preparation. Human colonies were not evacuating but instead building defensive positions. Their military was not retreating but moving forward to meet the Vexi threat. Supreme Commander Vextel received these reports aboard his flagship with growing irritation. The humans should have begun evacuating their colonies by now, but instead, they seemed to be preparing for battle. Their primitive technology posed no real threat to his forces, but their refusal to submit showed dangerous defiance. The stage was set for a conflict that would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the balance of power throughout the galaxy. Neither side fully understood what they were about to face in the coming war. The emergency session of the Colonial Defense Board lasted 18 hours as military leaders from across human space gathered on Earth. President Elena Rodriguez had called every admiral and general to develop a response to the Vexi threat. The conference room buzzed with tension as reports arrived showing alien ships massing near human territory. General Rick Barnes stood before the main display screen showing star charts of the frontier region. His weathered face showed the strain of command as he outlined their situation to the assembled officers. The Vexi controlled hundreds of star systems while humanity held only 12. Their technology appeared decades ahead of human capabilities. The alien ultimatum had expired 2 days ago, but no attacks had come yet. Long-range sensors detected Vexi fleets moving into position around human colonies, but they seemed to be waiting for something. Dr. Peter Morgan suggested they might be expecting surrender before beginning their assault. Admiral Carter presented the latest intelligence gathered by scout ships operating near enemy positions. The Vexi used tight formation flying with air. Largest ships protected by screens of smaller vessels. Their battle groups moved in precise patterns that suggested highly disciplined military doctrine. Captain Amy Lopez had just returned from a reconnaissance mission near Proxima Station, where she observed a Vexi fleet conducting training exercises. The alien ships flew in perfect coordination without any apparent communication between vessels. Each ship knew exactly where to be and when to be there, as if following predetermined instructions. This gave Barnes an idea that would reshape human military strategy. Instead of trying to match alien firepower, they would use mobility and unpredictability. Human ships would scatter across multiple systems and strike targets of opportunity rather than meeting the enemy in traditional fleet battles. The plan violated every principle of conventional space warfare, but conventional tactics would only lead to quick defeat against superior forces. Barnes ordered all human military vessels to abandon their defensive positions and form small, independent task forces. Each group would operate without central command and adapt their tactics based on local conditions. President Rodriguez authorized the largest military mobilization in human history. Civilian shipyards began converting merchant vessels into improvised warships, while weapons factories worked around the clock to arm the growing fleet. Every human world contributed ships and volunteers to the desperate cause. Tony Chun worked in the research labs beneath Luna City studying fragments of Vex-High technology recovered by scout ships. The alien metal was incredibly strong and their energy weapons used principles that human science barely understood. But he noticed something interesting about their defensive shields. The shield systems seemed designed to counter specific types of weapons using predetermined frequencies and power levels. They worked perfectly against the conventional energy weapons used by other alien species but might be vulnerable to rapidly changing attack patterns. Human adaptive targeting systems could potentially exploit this weakness. Chun shared his discoveries with weapons development teams across human space. Within days, they began modifying missile warheads and energy weapons to cycle through different frequencies during attack runs. The modifications were untested but represented humanity's best hope against superior alien technology. Meanwhile, the first Vex-High assault began at the mining colony on Kepler Prime. The alien fleet approached in perfect formation, expecting quick surrender from the human defenders. Instead, they found the colony apparently abandoned, with all civilian populations evacuated to underground shelters. Colonel Steve Adams commanded the defense force that remained hidden in the industrial sections of the mining facility. His troops had spent days preparing improvised weapons and setting explosive charges throughout the complex. When the Vex-High landed to secure the colony, they walked into carefully prepared kill zones. The battle for Kepler Prime lasted 3 days as human defenders used every dirty trick they could imagine. Mining equipment became improvised artillery while industrial chemicals created toxic gas clouds that forced the aliens to fight in protective suits. Building collapses blocked alien advances and channeled their forces into prepared ambush sites. Adams finally ordered evacuation when his ammunition ran low, but his small force had destroyed an entire Vex-High landing division. The aliens had expected easy victory but instead faced casualties they had never experienced before. Their rigid tactical doctrine had no answer for human creativity and desperation. Of the successful defense spread quickly through human space and morale began to improve. The Vex-High could be hurt and their technology was not invincible. More importantly, their military seemed unprepared for the unconventional warfare that humans were developing. Dr. Kate Williams analyzed captured Vex-High communications from the battle and made important discoveries about alien psychology. Their society appeared built on strict hierarchies where individual initiative was discouraged. Soldiers followed orders exactly without questioning or adapting to changing circumstances. This rigidity made Vex-High forces predictable but also inflexible when facing unexpected situations. Human commanders began developing tactics specifically designed to create chaos and confusion that would overwhelm alien decision-making processes. The Galactic Council watched these developments with growing alarm. Historical records showed that most species surrendered within weeks of first encountering Vex-High forces. Humanity had been fighting for over a month, and their resistance was actually growing stronger instead of weaker. Ambassador Zarthol reviewed intelligence reports showing human ships scattered throughout their territory like a plague of insects. Traditional fleet actions were impossible when the enemy refused to mass their forces for battle. The humans seemed to be rewriting the rules of galactic warfare. Supreme Commander Vextal grew increasingly frustrated as his forces struggled to pin down human defenders. Every victory was costly and temporary as human forces simply melted away before regrouping elsewhere. His perfectly trained legions were designed for conventional warfare, against civilized opponents not desperate guerrilla fighters. The war was entering a new phase as both sides adapted their strategies. The Vex-High began committing larger forces to each battle while humans developed even more creative ways to turn their weaknesses into advantages. Neither side yet understood that this conflict would reshape the balance of power throughout the entire galaxy. The war escalated rapidly as Vexay forces launched coordinated strikes against human colonies across the frontier. Supreme Commander Vextal had grown tired of human resistance and decided to demonstrate the price of defying his empire. Massive fleets descended on populated worlds expecting to crush all opposition within days. The assault on New Austin Colony began at dawn when alien ships darkened the sky above the main settlement. Colonel Steve Adams watched from his command post as thousands of HFY warriors landed in perfect formation around the city. Their purple armor gleamed in the morning light while energy weapons charged with deadly power. Adams had learned important lessons from the earlier battle at Kepler Prime. Instead of trying to hold fixed defensive positions, his troops abandoned the city center and melted into the industrial districts surrounding the colony. The maze of factories and warehouses provided countless hiding places for small groups of defenders. The HFY advanced into what appeared to be a deserted city, but found themselves under constant attack from unexpected directions. Human soldiers used modified mining equipment as artillery, while improvised explosive devices turned every street corner into a potential death trap. The aliens had trained for conventional warfare, but faced an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. Civilian engineer Tony Chun had arrived at New Austin just before the attack with a convoy of modified weapon systems. His research into HFY shield technology was finally paying off as human weapons began penetrating alien defenses. The adaptive frequency modulation he had developed turned their own defensive systems against them. The battle raged for 2 weeks as human defenders used every advantage they could find. They knew the local terrain while the aliens did not. They could move through maintenance tunnels and service corridors that enemy forces could not access. Most importantly, they fought for their homes while the HFY fought for conquest. Dr. Kate Williams monitored alien communications from the orbital command ship UN's Defiant and made disturbing discoveries. The HFY were becoming increasingly frustrated with human tactics, but instead of adapting, they were simply applying more force. Their rigid military doctrine had no provisions for guerrilla warfare. Individual HFY soldiers showed excellent training and discipline but lacked the ability to think creatively when faced with unexpected situations. They followed predetermined battle plans even when those plans clearly were not working. This inflexibility gave human defenders crucial advantages despite being outnumbered and outgunned. Captain Amy Lopez commanded the orbital defense of New Austin from her destroyer as HFY ships tried to provide close support for their ground forces. Human ships used hit-and-run tactics that prevented the aliens from establishing secure supply lines to the surface. Without regular resupply, the alien assault began to weaken. The tide turned when Adams led a daring raid against the HFY command post using captured alien equipment to penetrate their security perimeter. His small team destroyed the communication center that coordinated alien ground operations before fighting their way back to human lines. Without central coordination, the alien assault collapsed into confusion. News of the successful defense of New Austin spread throughout human space and inspired resistance on other threatened worlds. The HFY were not invincible, and their superior technology could be overcome through creativity and determination. More importantly, human tactics were evolving rapidly while alien doctrine remained unchanged. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions as reports arrived of continued human victories. Ambassador Zarthol studied intelligence data showing battle outcomes that defied all historical precedent. No species had ever maintained effective resistance against HFY forces for more than a few months. The reptilian warriors had maintained galactic peace for 3,000 years through their reputation for invincible military power. If humanity succeeded in defeating them, it could destabilize the political structure of known space. Other species might begin questioning VEX-HI dominance and demanding changes to the current order. Dr. Peter Morgan worked frantically in his laboratory studying captured VEX-HI equipment and biological samples. His research revealed that the aliens had evolved on a world with very stable environmental conditions. Their rigid social structure and inflexible thinking patterns were adaptations to a predictable universe, where change happened slowly. Humans had evolved under completely different circumstances on a chaotic world where rapid adaptation meant survival. Earth's harsh environment had produced a species capable of creative problem-solving and quick responses to changing situations. These traits were now proving decisive in galactic warfare. Major Dan Parker led special operations missions deep into 212 VEX-HI territory using modified stealth ships and captured alien technology. His team struck supply depots and communication centers while avoiding direct confrontation with enemy combat units. These raids disrupted alien logistics networks across multiple star systems. The VEX-HI military machine depended on centralized planning and precise coordination between widely scattered forces. When human raiders began cutting communication links and destroying supply dumps, entire sectors of the alien war effort began falling apart. Their strength became a weakness when the system was disrupted. Supreme Commander Vextal found himself fighting a war unlike anything in VEX-HI history. His perfectly disciplined legions were designed to crush organized resistance through superior firepower and tactical coordination. They had no training or doctrine for dealing with an enemy that refused to fight according to established rules. Reports from the front lines painted a disturbing picture of human adaptability. Every time VEX-HI forces developed countermeasures for human tactics, the humans simply changed their approach. They seemed capable of infinite creativity in finding new ways to turn VEX-HI strengths into weaknesses. Chief Engineer Lara Mitchell worked around the clock developing new weapon systems that combined human innovation with captured alien technology. Her hybrid designs gave human ships capabilities that matched or exceeded VEX-HI equivalents while maintaining the flexibility that was humanity's greatest advantage. The war was entering a critical phase as both sides committed their remaining reserves to the struggle. The VEX-HI could not afford to lose their first major conflict in millennia while humans fought for their very survival as an independent species. The outcome would determine not just their fate but the future balance of power throughout the galaxy. As battles raged across a dozen star systems, one thing became clear to observers from both sides. Humanity possessed something that no other species had ever brought to war against the VEX-HI Empire. They had the ability to adapt and overcome any challenge through creativity, determination, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Major Dan Parker crouched behind a cargo container as VEX-HI guards patrolled the supply depot on the moon of Rigel 7. His special operations team had spent 3 weeks infiltrating deep into enemy territory using captured alien technology to mask their human signatures. The mission was desperate but necessary as human forces needed to disrupt VEX-HI logistics before their next major offensive. The alien supply depot stretched for kilometers across the lunar surface, containing enough weapons and equipment to support a dozen fleet actions. Massive storage units held energy cells that powered VEX-HI ships while repair facilities maintained their advanced weapon systems. Destroying this facility would cripple alien operations throughout the entire sector. Parker had learned that VEX-HI military doctrine depended on a centralized supply network that moved resources efficiently between star systems. Unlike human forces that could adapt to local conditions and improvise solutions, the aliens needed constant resupply of standardized equipment. Their strength came from coordination, but this also created vulnerabilities. His team moved silently through the facility using stealth suits developed from captured alien technology. The HFY guards followed predictable patrol patterns that made infiltration easier for soldiers trained in unconventional warfare. Their discipline was perfect but also inflexible, which human special forces had learned to exploit. The demolition charges were placed throughout critical systems while alien technicians worked nearby unaware of the danger. Parker's people had studied HFY psychology enough to understand that individual guards would not deviate from assigned duties even if something seemed wrong. Their rigid adherence to protocol made them blind to threats they were not specifically trained to recognize. When the charges detonated, the entire facility disappeared in a series of massive explosions that could be seen from orbit. The destruction of Rigel 7 Depot immediately affected HFY operations across multiple star systems as fleets found themselves without adequate supplies or repair facilities. The centralized system that gave them coordination also made them vulnerable to targeted strikes. Admiral Lisa Carter received reports of the successful raid while planning Operation Phoenix from her command ship orbiting Mars. The massive coordinated strike would target HFY command and control centers throughout their occupied territory using every available human vessel. Instead of trying to match alien firepower, they would use speed and unpredictability to achieve victory. The plan violated every principle of conventional space warfare by dividing human forces into hundreds of small task forces, operating independently. Each group had broad authority to adapt their tactics, based on local conditions without waiting for orders from higher command. This approach created chaos that human forces thrived in but alien doctrine could not handle. Captain Bobby Rodriguez commanded the carrier Uns Freedom as part of the first wave of Operation Phoenix. His ship launched fighter squadrons using tactics adapted from ancient Earth aerial combat that no alien species had ever encountered. The small craft operated in coordinated swarms that overwhelmed HFY point defense systems through sheer numbers and unpredictable attack patterns. The Battle of Kepler Station became the first major human victory in conventional fleet action. Rodriguez positioned his forces to attack from multiple directions simultaneously, while smaller ships created distractions that drew alien attention away from the main assault. The HFY fleet was twice the size of human forces, but their rigid formations made them vulnerable to creative tactics. HFY commanders had trained for centuries in traditional fleet warfare, where ships of similar capability fought in organized battle lines. They had no experience with fighter swarms or missile salvos that changed frequency patterns during flight. Their superior technology became less important when they could not predict what weapons they needed to defend against. Chief Engineer Lavra Mitchell monitored the battle from her laboratory while making final adjustments to the hybrid weapon system she had developed. The combination of human innovation and captured alien technology was finally giving human ships the ability to penetrate HFY defenses. Her adaptive targeting systems turned alien shield technology against itself. The victory at Kepler Station sent shockwaves throughout both human and alien space. For the first time in the war, human forces had defeated a major HFY fleet in direct combat using tactics that completely baffled alien commanders. The psychological impact was enormous as both sides realized the tide of war was turning. Dr. Kate Williams analyzed captured communications from the battle and discovered that HFY morale was beginning to crack. Individual soldiers remained disciplined, but their officers were showing signs of confusion and doubt. The reptilian warriors had never faced an enemy that could adapt faster than their doctrine could respond. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions as news of human victories spread throughout known space. Ambassador Zarthol reviewed Intelligence reports showing Vexi forces retreating from multiple systems for the first time in recorded history. The implications were staggering for a political order built on reptilian military supremacy. Species that had submitted to Vexi rule centuries ago began questioning whether continued obedience was necessary. If primitive humans could defeat the mighty empire, then perhaps other civilizations could also resist. The foundation of galactic peace was beginning to crumble as the myth of Vexi invincibility collapsed. Supreme Commander Vextel found himself in an impossible situation as his forces faced defeats they had never experienced before. His perfectly trained legions were designed for conventional warfare against predictable opponents. They had no doctrine for fighting an enemy that seemed capable of infinite creativity and developing new tactics. The reptilian commander began requesting assistance from the Galactic Council, breaking 3,000 years of precedent. The Vexi had always maintained their position through independent military strength, but now faced an opponent their doctrine could not defeat. For the first time in galactic history, they needed help. Lieutenant Commander Holly Wright piloted her modified frigate deep into enemy territory, using stealth technology and psychological warfare to disrupt Vexi communications. Her mission revealed that the alien empire was beginning to fracture as subordinate species questioned reptilian military competence. The political structure that maintained galactic order was under threat. Human forces pressed their advantage by launching simultaneous attacks against communication centers and supply lines throughout Vexi space. The aliens found themselves fighting dozens of separate campaigns without the coordination that had always been their greatest strength. Their centralized command system became a liability when human raiders could strike anywhere at any time. War was approaching its climax as human tactics proved consistently effective against alien rigidity. Vexi forces had superior numbers and technology, but could not adapt to unconventional warfare fast enough to counter human creativity. Species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia was learning what it meant to face an opponent that refused to lose. The emergency session of the Galactic Council took place in the ancient chambers, beneath the crystal spires of Zentara Prime. Representatives from 12 different species gathered as reports arrived of unprecedented developments in the war between humanity and the Vexi Empire. The hall that had maintained peace for 3 millennia now buzzed with nervous energy. Ambassador Zarthal of the Council addressed the assembled delegates with grave concern in his voice. The Vexi had maintained galactic stability through their reputation for military invincibility, but human victories were destroying that carefully constructed image. If the reptilian empire fell, the entire political structure of known space could collapse into chaos. Intelligence reports showed human forces advancing deeper into Vexi territory using tactics that defied all military logic. Small independent units operated without central command while adapting their strategies in real time based on local conditions. No alien species had ever developed such flexible approaches to warfare. The delegates reviewed historical records, stretching back thousands of years, but found no precedent for what humanity was accomplishing. Every previous species that encountered Vexi forces had eventually submitted rather than face total destruction. The humans appeared to grow stronger with each battle instead of weaker. General Rick Barnes launched the final phase of human strategy by targeting the Vexi home system itself. The assault fleet numbered in the hundreds but flew as independent units rather than a coordinated armada. Each ship captain had broad authority to engage targets of opportunity without waiting for orders from higher command. The approach to the Vexi homeworld became a masterpiece of unconventional warfare as human ships arrived from dozens of different directions simultaneously. Some vessels attacked orbital defense stations while others struck supply convoys and communication centers. The aliens found themselves fighting multiple separate battles instead of one large engagement. Captain Amy Lopez commanded her destroyer in a daring raid against the main military academy where Vex High officers learned their rigid tactical doctrine. Her crew used captured alien codes to penetrate the facility's defenses before destroying training computers and educational materials. The psychological impact was devastating as it attacked the foundation of reptilian military thinking. Vex High Command panicked as their defensive doctrine proved completely inadequate against human creativity. Their forces were designed to counter other regimented alien militaries using conventional tactics and predictable strategies. They had no experience with opponents who seemed capable of infinite adaptability. Supreme Commander Vextel made the unprecedented decision to request military assistance from the Galactic Council. For 3,000 years, his empire had maintained independence through superior military strength, but now faced defeat by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The request shattered every assumption about reptilian invincibility. Dr. Peter Morgan worked frantically in his research laboratory analyzing the final pieces of evidence about human psychological advantages. His studies revealed that humanity possessed unique cognitive flexibility developed through evolution on a chaotic world where rapid adaptation meant survival. This mental agility gave them insurmountable advantages over species that evolved in stable environments. The discovery explained why human tactics worked so effectively against alien rigidity. Earth's harsh evolutionary environment had produced minds capable of creative problem-solving under extreme pressure. Other species with more predictable evolutionary histories could not match this psychological flexibility. Lieutenant Commander Holly Wright continued her deep reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines using advanced stealth technology to monitor Vex High communications. Her reports revealed that the reptilian empire was beginning to fracture as subordinate species questioned the competence of their supposed protectors. Worlds that had submitted to Vex High rule centuries ago began declaring independence as news of human victories spread throughout their territories. The military defeats were destroying the fear that held the empire together while inspiring resistance movements that had been dormant for generations. The political implications became clear as rebellion spread throughout Vex High space. The empire was not just losing a war but facing complete collapse as subject peoples realized their masters were not invincible. The foundation of galactic order was crumbling faster than anyone had thought possible. Admiral Carter coordinated the final assault on Vex High Naval Headquarters from her flagship as human forces pressed advantage. The battle was not just about military victory but about proving that creativity and determination could overcome any technological advantage. The outcome would reshape the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The reptilian defenders fought with desperate courage, but their rigid doctrine provided no answer to human unpredictability. Every countermeasure they developed was immediately countered by new tactics that seemed to emerge from nowhere. Their perfect discipline became a weakness when facing opponents who thrived in chaos. Captain Bobby Rodriguez led fighter squadrons in coordinated strikes against the main defense grid protecting the Vex High homeworld. His pilots used swarm tactics that no alien species had ever developed while adapting their attack patterns in real time based on enemy responses. The orbital fortresses designed to withstand conventional fleets crumbled under unconventional assault. Chief Engineer Lavra Mitchell monitored the battle while making final adjustments to weapon systems that combined human innovation with captured alien technology. Her hybrid designs had evolved throughout the war as human engineers learned to turn Vex High technological advantages against themselves. The breakthrough came when human forces penetrated the inner defense perimeter and began striking targets on the planet's surface. The psychological shock of seeing their homeworld under attack devastated VXI morale more than any military defeat. Their empire had never faced an enemy capable of reaching their core territories. Dr. Kate Williams analyzed intercepted communications and discovered that VXI political leadership was beginning to fracture under pressure. Individual commanders were making independent decisions without coordination from central authority. The rigid hierarchy that gave them strength in peacetime became chaos during crisis. The final phase of the assault targeted the Great Spires where VXI High Command coordinated their empire. Human special forces used stealth technology and captured access codes to penetrate the most secure facilities in reptilian space. The strikes were precisely calculated to destroy command capability without causing unnecessary casualties. As news of the successful assault spread throughout the galaxy, both human and alien observers realized they were witnessing a historical turning point. The species that had dominated known space for millennia was being defeated by newcomers who had learned to fight wars in completely new ways. The victory was not achieved through superior numbers or technology, but through psychological advantages that no other species possessed. Humanity had proven that adaptability and creative thinking could overcome any challenge when combined with absolute determination to never accept defeat. President Elena Rodriguez walked through the corridors of the ancient Galactic Council chambers on Zentara Prime with quiet confidence. The massive hall had witnessed 3,000 years of alien diplomacy, but never the entrance of humanity as an equal power. Behind her marched an honor guard from the UNS Constitution, while representatives from 12 species watched in stunned silence. The war was over, but the real battle was just beginning. Humanity had proven their military capabilities against the mighty VXI Empire, but now they needed to establish their place in galactic civilization. The outcome of these negotiations would determine whether humans would be accepted as equals or treated as dangerous upstarts to be contained. Supreme Commander Vextal stood before the council with his head bowed in defeat. The reptilian warrior, who had never known failure, was formally surrendering his empire's claim to human territory. The admission sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates as the HFY foundation of galactic order crumbled before their eyes. The VXI military had lost 30% of their fleet to human forces 1/10 their size. More importantly, they had lost something far more valuable than ships or weapons. Their reputation for invincibility was destroyed forever, and with it the fear that had maintained their empire for millennia. Ambassador Rachel Davis took her place at the speaker's podium to address the Galactic Council on behalf of humanity. She had spent months preparing for this moment while studying the complex diplomatic protocols that governed interspecies relations. Her words would either establish humanity as a respected member of galactic civilization or mark them as a threat to be eliminated. Davis began by explaining the human approach to warfare and why conventional military doctrine had failed against them. She revealed that humans did not simply fight to win battles, but to survive and overcome any obstacle. This psychological difference, born from Earth's chaotic evolutionary environment, made human defeat nearly impossible. The assembled aliens listened with growing understanding as she described how humanity had evolved on a world where rapid adaptation meant survival. Unlike species that developed on stable planets with predictable environments, humans had learned to thrive in chaos and find creative solutions to impossible problems. Dr. Peter Morgan presented his research findings about human cognitive flexibility and its advantages in warfare. His studies showed that the mental agility developed through Earth's harsh evolutionary process gave humans unique problem-solving abilities that no other known species possessed. The implications were staggering for delegates who had assumed technological superiority guaranteed military victory. Humanity had proven that psychology and adaptability were more important than advanced weapons when facing determined opposition. The lessons learned would reshape military thinking throughout the galaxy. Captain Bobby Rodriguez, now promoted to admiral, reflected on humanity's journey from isolated species to galactic power. The secret of their success was not superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but their absolute refusal to accept defeat combined with endless creativity and finding new solutions. The Vexhai Empire began restructuring itself as news of the peace agreement spread throughout their territory. Supreme Commander Vextal requested human military advisors to help his forces learn adaptive tactics that could counter future threats. The species that had dominated through rigid doctrine was learning the value of flexibility. Ambassador Zarthal formally proposed humanity's membership in the Galactic Council, while other species voted to accept the newcomers as equals. The decision was not based on military conquest but on recognition that human capabilities could benefit all civilizations in the galaxy. Other alien species began studying human culture and history, hoping to understand the source of their remarkable resilience. Universities throughout known space established new departments focused on human psychology and evolutionary development. The species that had seemed primitive was becoming a model for others to emulate. Lieutenant Commander Holly Wright received new orders to establish human embassies throughout former Vexhai territory where subject peoples were declaring independence. Her diplomatic missions would help newly free civilizations learn to govern themselves while maintaining stability during the peace transition period. The transformation was remarkable, as worlds that had been oppressed for centuries suddenly found themselves free to determine their own futures. Human advisors provided guidance on democratic governance and individual rights while respecting local cultures and traditions. General Barnes established new military academies where human and alien officers could learn adaptive warfare techniques together. The exchange of ideas created hybrid doctrines that combined the best aspects of different military traditions while maintaining the flexibility that was humanity's greatest strength. Chief Engineer Lavra Mitchell continued developing advanced technologies that merged human innovation with alien science. Her research centers became focal points for interspecies cooperation as beings from different worlds worked together to solve common problems. The Galactic Council chambers were expanded to accommodate humanity's permanent seat at the table of galactic governance. President Rodriguez appointed experienced diplomats to represent human interests while building alliances with species that shared their values of freedom and self-determination. Dr. Kate Williams established psychological research institutes dedicated to understanding the mental differences between species and how those differences could be used to prevent future conflicts. Her work helped create new approaches to diplomacy that recognized the unique strengths each civilization brought to galactic society. The final ceremony took place in the Great Hall, where human representatives took their oath as members of the Galactic Council. The species that had been unknown just months before was now recognized as a major power with responsibilities for maintaining peace and stability throughout known space. Commander Jake Sullivan, whose exploration ship had first encountered the Ting-Ti Vexhai, was promoted to head the new Interspecies Contact Division. His mission was to seek out other civilizations beyond the boundaries of known space while ensuring that first contact procedures would prevent future conflicts. As the ceremonies concluded, observers throughout the galaxy understood they had witnessed a fundamental change in the balance of power. Humanity had not conquered through force but had earned respect through their demonstration that determination and creativity could overcome any challenge. The question of why humanity does not lose wars was finally answered not through military superiority but through the recognition that some species possess qualities that make defeat impossible. The combination of adaptive thinking, creative problem-solving, and absolute refusal to surrender had proven more powerful than any weapon. Human colonies began expanding throughout the galaxy not as conquerors, but as partners in a new era of cooperation and mutual respect. The species that had learned to survive on a chaotic world was now helping to build a more stable and just galactic civilization for all.